we have power. And more importantly, after some delay, we have Norbert. So with Titanic's German connections, please give a warm welcome to Norbert Zimmer.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to speak to you today with a delay of 2 years. And my name is Norbert Zimmermann. I came from Germany, and I'm a Titanic historian and a book author. And I'm a member of the GTS, the German Titanic Society, and the Swiss Titanic Society. And first, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. And my passion about the Titanic began when I was a young boy, 6 or 7 years old. And then I first saw the movie with Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Wagner, this famous movie from 1953. And a couple of years later, it was on my 15th birthday, the wreck of the Titanic was officially discovered by Dr. Robert Ballard and Jean-Louis Michel. And this was the ultimate starting point of my Titanic passion. And I began to research about the history of the Titanic, and over the years I've been able to meet many interesting people in the Titanic community, including relatives of Titanic passengers. And it's now 14 years ago I wrote my first book about the Titanic, and in the meantime I've written 5 books about the Titanic, 4 in German language and 1 in English language. This one is in English language. This is a translation of my 4th German book. And I think the passion for the Titanic will never leave me. I've met so many wonderful people in the Titanic community. It's a huge part of my life. And it's great, it's absolutely awesome. Today I would like to take the opportunity to tell you some interesting stories about the German connections with the construction of the Titanic and the German passengers who traveled on the ship. First, I would like to tell you this is my first lecture in English language, and please don't boo me out when I make some mistakes. I will do my very best. And we'll start, but I can't start without my reading glasses. I'm an old man now. Oh, yes, let's put it here. So. Yes. For the anonymous task of building the Olympic class liners, Harald and Wolff also relied on some German companies. For example, the floating crane, which had been used during the construction of the Olympic class liners in Belfast, came from Benrather Maschinenfabrik AG from Düsseldorf-Benrath. After the merger to D-Mark, the company was later located in my hometown of Duisburg. The crane was delivered to Harald and Wolff in 1908 for the price of 106,672 Reichsmark, and had already been used in the construction of the RMS Olympic. There were some problems during the assembly of the crane in the shipyard, so Harald and Wolff had to request assistance from Germany, and with the help of some German specialists, the crane was successfully assembled. The crane played an essential part during the fitting out of the Olympic class liners after they had been launched from the slip race. For example, it lifted the generators into the ship's halls through the still uncovered superstructure, and also placed the steam boilers, which weighed several tons, into the boiler rooms. And it also placed the 4 funnels on top of the superstructure. The crane, which could carry a load of up to 250 tons and had a range of 52 meters, was used by Harald and Wolff in Belfast until the 1970s. A very long time. Interestingly, the cranes Harald and Wolff used from then on, the famous yellow Samson and Goliath, also came from a German company, Cobh. The gymnasium and the training machines of the Titanic on the starboard side of the boat deck, near the entrance to the forward first-class grand staircase, was designed and built by the company Firma Rossel, Schwarz & Co. AG in Wiesbaden. It had high arch windows opening onto the boat deck, and it was equipped with many, at the time considered, modern training machines, such as a punching bag fixed to the roof, and an automatic rowing machine. The gymnasium was also equipped with the so-called electric camel, which basically was a moving long stool that imitated the movements of a camel. Crazy. Come to the next. The very well-known German company Villeroy & Boch supplied the floor tiles and wall paneling in the bathrooms and toilets on board. During dives to the wreck of the Titanic, many of the floor tiles were discovered on the seabed. Here you can see the characteristic style of the floor tiles, and there were many discovered from the seabed of the Titanic. Interestingly, Villeroy & Boch provided tiles of a similar design for the construction of a great hospital complex in Bielitz near Berlin around 1906. But with a hexagonal instead of the well-known octagonal shape. This picture is from Alexander Cortus. Thank you very much. I can show this. It's very interesting. Oh no, it's too early. At last, the construction of the Titanic, the 8 pianos on board came from the Hamburg company Steinweg und Söhne, now known as Steinway & Sons. So this was part of the German connection with the construction of the Titanic and the Olympic. And now we come to the passengers. I have 4 passengers. I will talk to you a short story about the life, about the
biography.
The biography, yes. And,
also, some of the tiles, I think there are some tiles from Villeroy & Boch that are similar. They're in the Titanic Hotel in the bar.
yes.
To decorate the bar.
So, there were not many German passengers on board the Titanic. At the time, most Germans who could offer a cruise across the Atlantic preferred to travel with German shipping companies, such as the Hamburg America Line and the Norddeutsche Lloyd. Another reason was that German seaports offered direct Atlantic passages, and therefore traveling by train was no longer necessary if the voyage was started from German seaports. Logical. But altogether, there were still 18 Germans on board when Titanic departed on their maiden voyage. 6 of them were crew members, and 12 had booked a passage to New York. There were also some passengers with a German heritage on board. The most famous example being Isidor Ida Strauss, who were both born in Germany and emigrated to America as children. Or Adolphe Saalfeld, also a man with a German heritage. And now I will start with a very interesting German passenger. He was very strange, and I hope you enjoy this. But first I must have a little bit drink. It's very hot inside. So, one of the surviving German passengers was a 20-year-old Alfred Mornay. He came from Cologne and had fled from the German police to France. But since he was a notorious gambler, he had also had to leave Paris. With illegally won money, he dressed up and bought a second-class ticket for the Titanic to start a new life in America. The train to Cherbourg and boarded the Titanic as Baron Alfred von Drachstedt. So real name. According to other sources, Mornay wanted to avoid paying child support for a child born out of marriage, and therefore wanted to flee to America. Very nice guy. Arriving in his cabin, he complained to the steward that this cabin was not stewardable, and he demanded to be transferred immediately to the first class. After some discussions, he then changed to the first class for an extra charge of £36. On board the ship, he sent several telegrams to his family in Germany to inform them that he was now on the Titanic. When the Titanic hit the iceberg, he was playing cards in the first-class smoking room. As Nonai said, he only noticed a very slight movement to the left and then to the right again. And after a short interruption, he continued to play cards. A few minutes later, Nonai became restless and went up on deck when it was freezing cold and nobody was to be seen. He went forward to the hatch, looked down and wondered about the huge blocks of ice lying there. Alfred Nonai got off the ship in lifeboat number 7, which was launched with only 36 people on board. When the Titanic was settling lower and lower into the water, Alfred Nonai was sitting in his lifeboat and smoked a cigarette. Then another passenger grabbed his arm and said, "She's going." Then Nonai took a closer look and saw that the Titanic taking the final plunge into the sea. He heard a thunderous noise, which he thought was the breaking of the engines inside the ship. And then the ship was gone. For fear of being pulled down by the ship's suction, the boat's passengers began to go further and further away. When they stopped for a moment, they heard the people calling for help in the freezing cold water, which sounded like a siren sound. But boat number 7 did not row back to pull people out of the water, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, Alfred Nonai was rescued by the climate liner Carpathia. On board the Carpathia, Nonai tried to send a telegram to his mother in Cologne to inform her that the Titanic had sunk and he was safely on board the Carpathia, but had lost all his belongings and money. But this telegram was never sent. All of Nonai's money, 750 Reichsmark, had sunk into the sea with the Titanic, and so he tried to travel back to Europe after his arrival in New York. In his later life, he made his living with player tricks and odd jobs. He married 2 times and had 2 daughters and 1 legitimate son with which he later had no more contact. For the 15th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic, he appeared in a German TV documentary and described his experiences on board the Titanic. Probably every Titanic enthusiast from Germany knows his description of the sinking. And rooms, then the Titanic was gone. This man was a real storyteller. Alfred Nonai died in 1972 at the age of 80 and was buried in the Verlaten Cemetery in Cologne. Come to the next. Another German on board was the 46-year-old Alfred Teisinger, who worked as a cabin steward on the Titanic. He was a British citizen of German nationality and lived in Southampton. From 1911, Teisinger was in the service of the White Star Line and was employed as a deck steward on the Olympic. And 1 week before departure, he signed on the Titanic. According to him, he served aboard the Titanic as a cabin steward for Benjamin Guggenheim and Isidor Strauss. However, it is questionable that this is the truth, because he served in completely different areas of the ship. When he was informed about the collision with the iceberg, he was given the task of waking and assisting the passengers for which he was responsible. When he had done his duty, Teisinger went to the boat deck to see if he could save himself. There he helped to load boat number 15. When all lifeboats were lowered, he was on his own. Together with some other stewards, he jumped off the ship into the freezing North Atlantic and swam to lifeboat number 11, which picked him up. From there he saw the ship split in 2. In the early morning he was rescued by the Carpathia, as were the other 711 survivors. After his arrival in New York, he gave an interview to some newspapers, as well as to the Washington Herald, in which he reported about his experiences on board. Only 2 months after the sinking, Teisinger sailed again for the White Star Line on the Majestic, and remained employed as a deck steward for the White Star Line until 1914. After the beginning of the First World War, Teisinger returned to Germany in 1914, probably because of the anti-German atmosphere in England. Not much is known about his later life, except that according to the latest information, he died in 1949 in Germany at the age of 83. 3 years ago, a photo of Alfred Teisinger appeared for the first time. Until then, it was unknown how he looked like. And here you can see this picture of Alfred Teisinger. Thank you to Malte. I can show you this picture. Absolutely amazing.
And what interesting was it was published with an interview, and in this interview he said that he also was responsible for Strauss. And you already mentioned that it can't be that he was responsible for all the famous passengers.
Yes.
But so he's a good storyteller too. So the interesting thing is that he says that the Strauss family tried to speak in German to him when they recognized that he's German. But the Strauss, of course, lived in the US for many, many years.
Yes,
and they spoke a very, very strange dialect, Pfälzisch. So that's not German, I can't understand them. So Alfred Teisinger said that he had to ask the Strauss family, please, to talk English to him because he's not able to understand their German.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Walter. And next, the heroic story of the 40-year-old priest Josef Peruschitz, who was on his way to Minnesota where he wanted to build up a convent school. Father Joseph spent the Easter week of the year 1912 in the Benedictine monastery St. Augustine in Ramsgate, England. On April 10, 1912, he boarded the Titanic as a second-class passenger at Southampton. Like most priests or teachers who were on board the Titanic, he paid £13 for his ticket. On board the ship, he held church services together with 2 other priests in which he preached in German and Hungarian. How Father Joseph was informed about the accident is not clear. It is possible that he was informed by Father Thomas Biles, because Biles had been on deck at the time of the collision and had seen the iceberg. Father Joseph then put on his habit, took his life jacket out of the cupboard and climbed up on deck. When he arrived at the boat deck, he met Father Biles. Together they tried to help the women to get into the lifeboats. After some time, the 2 priests left the boat deck and returned below decks to the second-class staterooms. It was reported that they went from cabin to cabin in comfort. At just before 2 o'clock, they returned to the boat deck, and almost all the lifeboats had left the ship. The 2 priests were offered 2 places in a lifeboat by a crew member, but they refused this offer. After all the boats were lowered, Father Joseph and Father Biles walked to the now steeply rising stern and made their way through the people. About 100 passengers, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, surrounded the 2 priests. A large number of people bowed down, formed a circle, and began to praise the Our Father. Many cried and begged for help. Both priests encouraged them and finally gave them absolution. Other passengers ran in panic to the stern, which rose steeply out of the water. When the Titanic sank in the North Atlantic at 2:20 a.m., Father Josef Peruschitz was among the victims. His body was never found. After a few days, news of the sinking of the Titanic and the probable death of Father Joseph also reached his former monastery Cheyenne in Germany, but only after more than a month later did the such news about the death of Josef Peruschitz become reality. In the monastery Cheyenne in Bavaria in Germany, today a memorial plaque remembers Father Josef Peruschitz. I think he was a true hero, absolutely, and Father Thomas Biles too. Both priests stay on the ship. At last, but not least, I have a very interesting story about Leo Zimmermann, who was 29 years old at the time of the sinking of the Titanic, and his story is of course of interest for me, insofar that he had the same surname as me, and some of my own family members were living at the same time in the area in which Leo Zimmermann lived at that time. But after some research from my side, however, it became clear that I am not related to Leo Zimmermann. His last known place of residence was the peaceful village of Todtmoos in the Black Forest in Germany, where he worked as a farmer. Leo Zimmermann had a total of 9 siblings, 5 boys and 4 girls. His father worked as a sales agent. The life was difficult for the family in the countryside, and in 1900, the house of the Zimmermann family, which was already 150 years old, burned down completely, and the family lost everything. And 5 years later, 1905, Leo's mother, Ludwina, died. Leo Zimmermann also dreamed of a better life in the New World, and therefore decided to emigrate to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in Canada, where his brothers Edwin and Arnold already lived. To realize his dream, he bought a ticket for the maiden voyage of the Titanic from the Swiss agency Kaiser & Sie in Zurich for the price of 390 Swiss francs and boarded the luxury liner in Southampton on April 10, 1912. Now it comes a very interesting part, and with the help of the BTS, especially from Clive Sweetingham, I found out that it seems that Leo initially wanted to travel to New York on the Titanic sister ship, the Olympic. But recently surfaced documents shows his name crossed out on the passenger list for April 3, 1912. This was completely unknown. Rather, he preferred to sail on the new Titanic, but the reason is unclear. Here you can see this. And his name is crossed out. And I saw this for the first time and I was totally surprised. It was completely unknown. However, he did depart from Southampton on the Titanic on April 10, 1912. Leo occupied cabin E58 together with the Swiss brothers Anton and Vincent King, along with 2 others. When the ship hit the iceberg, the men tried to escape later in the night, but only Anton King managed to get into a lifeboat, number 2. Everyone else from cabin E58 died, including Leo Zimmermann, and his body was never found. On June 4, 1912, Leo's father Josef and his brother Matthäus received the news of Leo's death via the Grand Ducal District Office St. Blasien. 2 months later, the family made claims for damages, including a refund of the cost of his Titanic ticket, and a settlement in the amount of 8,050 Reichsmark for Father Josef Zimmermann, whose living expenses Leo was supposed to have paid for. In the claim, they added, "We would also like to add that the father and all the siblings are poor people, and that the requested sum is certainly low." On April 8, 1913, almost a year after the tragedy, the family received an answer. According to a message from the Imperial Consulate General in London, the request of Matthäus Zimmermann in Tottenham has not been considered. Only Father Josef Zimmermann was awarded an amount of 805 Reichsmark, a small amount for a loss of a human life, I think so. Today there are hardly any references to Leo Zimmermann. There's a hint that he was once a member of the Musikverein on the Topmost Weg. And there's a photo of him from 1899 in which he can be seen as a 16-year-old boy with a trumpet. And thank you to Jens Ostrowski from the German Titanic Society that I can show you this picture. Which you can see Leo here. This is Leo Zimmermann. In September 2020, on the initiative of the Titanic Society Swiss, the German Titanic historian Jens Ostrowski and the local government of Tottenham in Germany, a memorial plaque was erected in honor of Leo, so that after more than 100 years, Leo Zimmermann will finally be remembered in his hometown Tottenham in Germany. From the 18 Germans on board, 9 died in the sinking. From the second class, August Meyer, Josef Peruschitz and Franz Kohlbaum. From the third class, Emil Christmann, Ernst Wilhelm Törber and Leo Zimmermann. From the crew, Josef Dominikus Heinen, Louis Müller and Karl Tietz. And they all died in the sinking of the Titanic. The German survivors are from the first class, Antoinette Pflegenheim, née Wendt, Amalie Giger, she was the personal maid of Mrs. Widener, Emilie Kreuchen, she was the personal maid of Mrs. Robert, Alfred Nurnay, and Emma Scharber. From the third class, Louise King, née Heilmann, and from the crew, Alfred Heisinger, Franz Wilhelm Kasper, and Richard Propper. So this was the end of my lecture, and I would like to thank you all for your attention, and you don't put me out, thank you. And the BTS for the kind of presentation, thank you very much.